Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Leadership Spotlight series with Positive Vibes Consulting. Thank you for loving our show and motivating me to come back every fortnight for an insightful conversation with some of the best leaders of the country. And today I have someone who dons multiple hats. He's not only a great HR leader, but a very inspiring and value adding professional on social media. His posts are usually very witty, what I call hatke, and not run of the mill. And most of all, he's known for his deep baritone voice. Please join me in welcoming Sahil Nayar.
Hi, Shivani. Thank you so
Hi,
much for having
Sahil.
me over. Hi.
It's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you with us, Sahil. Thank you for taking out the time. And for the audience here, Sahil is a senior associate director with KPMG. From being a certified NLP, MBTI, and design thinking practitioner to taking the time out to listening into the junior most colleagues on the team, he takes immense pride in leading the people function for the delivery center at KPMG in India. Sahil is working closely with the firm's leadership to drive the next gen practices through the three J's, which is Junoon, Jasba, and Josh. Wow, that is so Sahil. And building an employer brand, leading and engaging high performing teams are Sahil's forte. And beyond HR, he loves music, traversing treacherous roads, and trying out different cuisines. He's a regular columnist in various leading HR magazines, a keynote speaker across industry and academia bodies, and a visiting faculty at MBA colleges across the country. Sahil, great to have you with us today. And we're going to talk to Sahil on a topic that is his forte, obviously, but something on which he has done some very inspiring work, and that is employer branding. So, Sahil, employer branding or employer ranting, that's the topic that we chose. So, how are the two connected? Let's begin the conversation with that.
I think, Shivani, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your show. I've been hearing a lot of your guests come on, and I think you're doing a fantabulous job as part of the Leadership Spotlight series. So kudos to you and the entire team that's working behind this.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Means a lot.
I think when we started discussing this a couple of weeks ago to say, what do we talk about? I know you very clearly said, Sahil, let's talk something hatke. And
Yes.
that really stayed with me, right? And I said, we all keep talking about COVID, the pandemic, so much is happening, HR taking a seat at the boardroom, at the center table. Cliche
Yeah.
stuff, we've been hearing it for decades now.
Yes.
But I think fundamentally, what has really changed and where we've seen a paradigm shift in the last 12 to 18 months
Hmm.
is earlier HR was known to do HR was known to play the role of a lawyer, to mitigate, to arbitrate, to work between the management and the employees, and all of those things that we all know.
Yeah.
So I won't spend too much time repeating it.
Yeah.
But I think fundamentally, bringing the human back in the human resource
Absolutely.
has never ever been more personified in the last 18 months. I think from wave one,
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
we just looked at numbers on our
Yeah.
screen on prime time, to
Yeah.
wave two, where numbers became names of
A
people who we
reality.
knew,
Absolutely.
uh, people who we grew up with, who we
Yeah.
loved,
Yeah.
family. I think fundamentally what HR has significantly moved the needle, and in fact for themselves also upskilled,
Hmm.
is the ability to process and deal with grief.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think when you look at this whole concept of, and maybe take a couple of minutes in the prelude before we get into the
Yeah.
whole conversation, right?
Sure.
The whole concept of dealing with pain has always been to brush it under the carpet. You've had a bad day at work. In the evening, go have a couple of drinks with your friends. You've had a bad day at work. Go
Yeah.
down for a smoke break and do some gossip.
Yeah.
You've had a
Yeah.
bad day when you're driving back home. play some wonderful music on the drive back home, and go back home to your family who loves you more
Yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah.
But in the process of blurring boundaries between work and home, I
Hmm.
think we have tried to be alpha males and alpha females. I think what all
Completely
of us
agree.
have tried to do is to brush it under the carpet and say, okay, the show must go on. Let's go back to work again. Let's smile. Let's be the HR for our people that we need to be every single day.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reality, Shivani, is, and to all your viewers and my followers on LinkedIn, I think the reality is we have not sat down to process the pain, the grief, the overload, the kind of pressure that our roles have brought in because of COVID 19.
Absolutely.
And therefore, what is happening is many organizations today have realized that moving from the stereotype, archaic organizations that would say, listen, this is an employer's market, we've
Yeah.
fundamentally shifted to an employee's market,
Yeah.
not just from talent attraction,
Hmm.
but more importantly, even by being a listening organization.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
therefore comes the topic of saying how much of branding,
Yeah.
because employer branding on one end of the spectrum
Yeah.
and employee ranting on the other
Yeah.
end of the spectrum.
Absolutely. I think you brought out, a very, very, again, I would say a hatke thought. When we talk about this, the change that has happened to the HR fraternity in this pandemic, we usually talk about, longer working hours, or talking about, work-life balance, and, being employee sounding board and all of that. But you brought out a very beautiful point, which is around, bringing out the human in the human resources. And I think that's what has been the biggest, I would say, value add that HR people have been able to do. That's the expectation of any employee at this point in time, and not just employee. I think even the organization and the concept of listening organization, I think, again, if organizations become listening organizations, I think there's a lot of things that they can do in terms of, not just employer branding, but simply touching the lives of people. So completely, agree with you. Very beautiful points brought out, there, Sahil. Now, employer branding, has become a buzzword, and organizations are taking conscious initiatives to brand themselves as employers of choice. So, for the benefit of our audience, let's first decode the word employer branding. What does it mean to you, and why do you think it has become so important in organizations today?
Sure. So I think, I briefly touched upon this in the previous question to talk about, is it an employer's market or an employee's market?
Yeah,
I go back to our college days, right? We all learned economics. We all
yeah,
learned demand and supply.
yeah,
Whenever demand is high and supply is low, we all
yeah,
know what happens to
yeah.
price,
Yes,
right? And whenever
yes,
supply is high, demand is low, we know what happens to price.
absolutely. Yeah.
Now, why have organizations decades ago thought of investing dollars in employer branding? For a simple reason that they want to go out there to their specific target audience, their talent group, to say, this
Hmm.
is who we are. Yeah. It is
Hmm.
nothing, employer branding, personal branding is no different than what I call advertising, right? When you go
Right.
and look at a brand advertising itself, they're
Yeah.
also doing branding,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
similarly, here, organizations are doing branding, and even human beings do a lot of personal branding.
True. True. Yes.
Now, where does this need come from? This need
Hmm.
comes from the sheer fact that
Hmm.
when there is significant competition,
Hmm.
you need to stand out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And therefore, when you need to stand out, going back to
Hmm.
again the simple concepts of what is a USP,
Yeah.
what is your unique selling proposition, what
Yeah.
is your EVP in this
Yeah.
context, what is your employer value proposition, to really
Right.
say what makes you stand out. Everyone's giving the money,
Yeah.
everyone's giving a great culture, everyone's
Yeah.
saying, I'll give you great career growth. And
Yeah.
therefore, what is your USP? And that's where the need for employer branding comes. But I think
Right.
that's still very outdated, right? Because employer branding, we've seen so many organizations do it in the
Yes.
last decade or so.
Yes.
I think if we
Yes.
have to really fast forward to where we
Yeah.
are today,
Yeah.
today, Shivani, what has fundamentally changed
Hmm.
is when we were growing up, we all saw QSQT, yeah, Qayamat se Qayamat tak.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, people changed the definition to say quarter tak, right? You look at profits, quarter tak,
Yes.
how are you performing quarter by quarter? I think
Yeah.
fundamentally, what has happened now
Hmm.
is that people and organizations and India Inc. have
Hmm.
said yes.
Hmm.
All these years, profits were important,
Hmm.
but the whole concept
Hmm.
of life,
Hmm.
human life, has
Yeah.
taken precedence.
Right. Right.
And not just that, but India Inc. has been put to test. And I'll tell you
Hmm.
why.
Hmm.
A lot of big multinational organizations, smaller organizations, family run organizations in
Hmm.
the last 12 to 18 months have been fundamentally tested
Hmm.
on the wall. The beautiful values that we put on the wall have
Absolutely.
come to
Yes.
life.
Yes. Yes. You're
Yeah, have
so
come
right.
to life.
So right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
what has happened is people who gave those big promises and those lovely values have been tested to say, have you retrenched people?
Hmm.
Have you actually kept people on board and not reduced their salaries? Have you kept
Hmm.
people on board but reinstated now that you're in better space? And all of this has a
Yeah.
lot to do with how deep your pockets are, but
Yeah.
it has also a lot to do with your own value system as an organization.
Absolutely. And how humane are you as an organization? Definitely.
And therefore, while employer branding can be one side of the spectrum to say, I have a couple of dollars, let me put it on employer branding, let me go out there, do some nice LinkedIn posts, run some activities, run some competitions, go on to campus and
Hmm.
have campus brand ambassadors as my potential talent and build the
Hmm.
organization brand.
Hmm.
The other end of the spectrum, when the
Hmm.
waters turn rough, everyone just looks very keenly to say whose boat sails in the same storm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think that's the litmus test of employer branding. But I think one point that you touched upon, Sahil, is around the shift that has been made. It's been going on for a long time, and it's been a, like you said, a sort of a cliched approach all these years in terms of all the measures that you said to make an employer branding. But now the paradigm shift has happened when people have actually, like you said, seen whose boat has sailed. And that's, I think, the entire definition of employer branding has changed in the last 18 months. And it's no longer what it used to be. It's no longer just talking good about the company. And it's my next question is a follow up to what you just said. So if there is a shift in an employer, in this whole paradigm of employer branding, so how does one now in the current times get started to do some work around this area? What is your tip for people who want to do something about it but don't know what to do? So how do we start? How does one
Sure.
start it?
I think that's a very good question, Shivani, because whatever's happened so far has happened, right?
Yeah.
You always take baby steps and get into whatever you want to do. I
Yeah.
think fundamentally the mindset has to be very clear. You got to walk the talk,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just going to
Yeah.
go back to what brands have done in the recent past, like we've
Hmm.
really seen, or even in a while ago, right? So many brands, established brands, got hit,
Yeah.
right? And what do they do? Be it in the space of chocolates, be it in the space of beverages. We've seen so many brands, or be it in the space of 2 minute magic. We have
Yeah.
seen brands that have got so badly hit.
Yeah.
Some of them
Yeah.
got great celebrities to come back and back them. Some of
Yes.
them said, you know what, a celebrity may come and endorse my brand, but will
Hmm.
that really make a difference? Maybe in
Hmm.
some target audiences it would, but
Hmm.
effectively it might not. And maybe what I need to do is go back to my entire supply chain and
Hmm.
see where is it that I'm getting hit.
Right.
Some brands said, maybe I have a distributor issue. Can we
Yeah.
focus on that? Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think people are any different. I don't think employer branding is anything different. If you make a promise to a candidate saying, I will get back to you, get back. It doesn't matter. The guy will still, if the guy is mature enough, the guy will still respect you for getting back as compared to saying, I'll
Absolutely.
get back to you and never get back. Small things. It
Yes.
requires no MBA from Harvard. It requires no kind of working with a multinational. You may be working for a very small organization. And I'm
Yes.
sure many of your audiences are from various SMEs or various mid-sized organizations. I think it is about walking the talk. So number one,
Yeah.
walk the talk. You make a commitment, go back. Number
Hmm.
two, don't have that fear of saying, I need to always go back with the good news.
Hmm. True.
I think people have become very mature and they understand that even if you get back to saying, you know what, you said this, great idea, but I don't think we're in a position to implement it right now.
Hmm.
Or we will implement it, but it is a 3-month journey. And therefore,
Hmm.
I request you to be patient because we are
Hmm.
on that journey.
Hmm.
As compared to not just listening. And we all know the difference between listening and hearing,
Hearing.
right?
Yeah.
And therefore, that is very important. Number three,
Yeah.
getting into the space of employment branding or employment branding or employee branding, the way you want to call it, with different stakeholders playing different roles.
Yeah.
I think credibility,
Hmm.
authenticity,
Hmm.
and more important, self orientation are three
Hmm.
aspects we will definitely focus on because all
Super.
of this will actually build trust.
Yeah.
If your self orientation is very high, when
Hmm.
it's supposed to be the denominator and you make it the numerator, you have a problem because then you're
Yeah.
saying it's about I, me,
Me,
myself,
myself. Yeah.
which defeats the purpose.
Absolutely,
Right?
it does. And I think that's where a lot of organizations go wrong when it's all about I, me, myself. It's like I'm blowing my own trumpet that I'm a really good employer, but on the other hand, on the side, my employees are saying something else about me. So
Yeah.
that's where I
And
think it goes
the
wrong.
irony
Yeah.
of that is when, and maybe we'll just do a slight deep dive into this. The moment you
Yeah.
make it about I, me, myself,
Hmm.
you see a great dichotomy between what the individual or the organization talks and what
Yeah.
the audience talks. There's a
Yeah.
huge disconnect, right?
Absolutely.
The second
Yeah.
culture that you make as a fundamental mistake
Hmm.
is you build this, what I call as the God culture, which means the junior most person or mid management or top management becomes very layered.
Hmm.
So if you write to the CEO, something happens immediately. You get all the attention, you get the focus because you've gone to the
Hmm.
God.
Hmm.
But for the same
That's
thing,
true.
if you go to your manager or your
Hmm.
boss or in
Hmm.
the people in the ecosystem, things
Hmm.
don't seem to work,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
wrong because then you're
Yeah.
building the God culture.
God culture. Yeah.
And the way
Yeah.
I look at it is you got to do the right thing.
Hmm.
And if everybody in the organization can do the right thing, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter whether you go to a manager, you go to a director, or you
Yeah.
go to the CEO. Everyone will give
Yeah.
you the same answer because you're doing the right thing.
Yes. No, very true. I completely agree with this, Sahil. One, thing that you pointed out was walk the talk, live by your commitments. Sometimes what people don't realize, and what organizations don't realize it is that employer branding does not start when somebody comes into the organization. It starts right from that first phone call that you make to a candidate. The experience that you give to the candidate, whether you hire him or not, but the kind of experience that you give to him while you call him for an interview. Do you make him sit for hours and wait, or it's like a smooth process where he comes, you value his time, you show that you value his time, you thank him for it, and even, and the most important thing of getting back. Even if people are not selected, there is an expectation that, okay, mujhe bata do, even if I'm not selected, just let me know, just don't go incommunicado. So I think these are small things, but they matter a lot. Like you rightly said, that they matter a lot, in because these people are your brand ambassadors. People who are not even selected are your brand ambassadors, and they are more likely to say either good things or bad things about the hiring experience that they've had, or based on their limited interaction. So even, if the company is a great employer in terms of treating its people really well, but if you don't really treat the candidates who come for interview well, their limited experiences of you not being, too great a place to work. So I think that really matters. And just a related question to this, you spoke about EVP, right? In the employer branding parlance, we often hear about this term called employee value proposition. Now, in your experience, what's the value proposition to attract the talent of today? And then I will, I'll ask you the second part of that question, because today, when I say talent of today, it's a mixed bag, right? There are, baby boomers, there is Gen X, and there are millennials coexisting in a sort of a multi-dimensional corporate environment. So my second part of this question is that should companies then customize their employer branding initiatives for the talent of today? So two in one
I
question for
think
you.
you've actually answered the question by giving the second part of the question as well,
Is
right?
it?
So the answer lies in your question itself, because think of it this way, and maybe I'll again take another analogy.
Yeah.
एक जमाना था, परिवार साथ में बैठता था, दूरदर्शन देखते थे, अच्छा
जी.
लगता, right? Because
जी.
you had All India Radio, you had
Yeah.
Doordarshan.
Yeah.
From audio, you actually
And you had
moved to
that
video.
antenna. And you had
You
that
had the
antenna on
antenna
the
and all of that, absolutely. But from
Yeah.
audio, you moved to video.
Yeah.
And therefore, video was plus plus.
Yeah.
From Doordarshan, you moved to 500 channels
Hmm.
with over
Yeah.
20, 30 channels in your own regional language,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
From there, you move to OTT.
Hmm.
From there, you move to Uberization, or what I call on OTT, or Uberization of today on Netflix. The algorithm can actually pick up, oh, over the last 1 month, Sahil is watching these kind of themes,
Yeah. And it'll suggest the
right?
same things to you. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what comes as a suggestion. Now, my fundamental belief is that any organization, or for that matter, India Inc., cannot be in isolation, which means corporate India needs to mirror society. If
True.
in my personal space,
Hmm.
I have opportunities available that can fundamentally understand who I am as a person, what are my likes, what are my dislikes, what are my preferences, what time of the day, what kind of stuff do I like to consume. Why is it that organizations find it so difficult to personalize, be it rewards, be it connects, be it a moodometer, or whatever you want to talk about in the entire employee life cycle? Think of it. The lowest common denominator, what we studied in school in math, is the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where we significantly struggle is to say, yes, entertainment, I can give you the lowest common denominator because the algorithm picks up everything.
Yeah.
But why is it that I'm going to tell you that, you know what, these are the standard set of awards? Or sorry, you want to choose your compensation, these are only the 4 aspects within the basket that you can choose from. Why is it that I can't appreciate that someone wants an NPS?
Yeah.
Whereas someone actually wants, the pension scheme, whereas someone on the other hand may be looking at ESOPs, whereas someone on the other hand may say, you know what, give
Just give
me
me the
higher
money.
variable because keep my fixed slightly lower. But if I
Yeah.
perform, I want 50% of my fixed as variable,
Yeah.
let alone all of them. If the
Yeah.
statute allows us to make PF optional,
Yeah.
why are we pushing PF for employees?
Yes. And making
Fundamental,
it compulsory.
very easy things to do. Because
Yeah.
maybe that person is at that age or stage in his or her life where
Yeah.
he needs the money and doesn't want to park it under PF, or
True.
as an ideology, doesn't believe in PF.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or wants to put the money in so many other instruments which are
Wherever.
far more. Yeah.
I want to do hedging, I want to do an FNO, I may want to do anything.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Why is it that we start pushing ourselves onto people?
Yeah.
That needs to stop.
Yeah, but do you think it's this customization is happening, Sahil? Do you feel that
Of course it is. Of course
we
it
have
is. Many
started, not just in
organizations are
terms of
doing that.
rewards, not just in terms of rewards, but in terms of the overall engagement strategy? Do you feel it is it's being it's being customized? The branding part is being customized.
See, I'll tell you how this works, Shivani. Number
Hmm.
one, people need to fundamentally understand that you can only do targeting once you do
Hmm.
segmentation.
True. Yeah.
Again, simple marketing concepts.
Yeah.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
anything that people don't know.
Yeah.
But we've all studied this. Now, how do you
Yeah.
target? You target once you segment. You
Yeah.
segment once you understand whether it's geography, whether it's psychology, whether it is any other parameter or metric that works for you or your organization.
Yeah.
You need to segment well. Now, the
Hmm.
reality is how many people are on this journey to
Hmm.
understand segmentation?
Hmm. Right.
Because segmentation by itself is
Hmm.
so dynamic in today's world.
Yes. Yes.
Therefore, the amount of time, effort, money, energy being spent on targeted rewards or targeted engagement is
Yeah.
somewhere people understand the need, but they're just thinking, listen, the amount of ROI on it, is it really going to come? And
Yeah.
therefore, what ends up happening is that anything that's available off the shelf, it's
Yeah.
easier to pick up.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think this holds true for organizations which have, a diverse set of people. I think this really needs to be done in organizations because, I've, worked in an organization which had both the extremes. So they had, people who were like 50 plus and people, who were just management trainees coming in from campus. But, the engagement strategy, the rewards, everything was the same. So while it appealed to a certain generation, the other generation felt this is not the place for me, and a lot of people ended up leaving the organization because of the fact that everything was like you said, offered off the shelf. This is what it is, take it or leave it types. So I think yes, I agree with you that it needs to be it is of course a lot of effort. It's not easy to sort of understand that segmentation that you spoke about in the marketing language. So segmenting employees based on their maybe their age, their where they are from, the places that they are located in, the place of posting, it may be very different, their needs. So but Sahil, how does one do that? How, I mean, I'm sure a lot of HR
So,
people here would want to do that. How do they
yeah, so maybe
start
I'll
that?
come to this. Yeah, I'll come to the solutioning part of it, right? I
Yeah.
think fundamentally, what is very important is this needs to change, which is the
Hmm.
mindset,
Hmm.
right? Uh, all these years, managers had a view that, oh, this guy needs to sit right outside my cabin
Hmm.
because I need to monitor
Hmm.
progress.
Hmm.
I need to
Hmm.
see कितना काम हुआ, कितने time में हुआ.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
that's how I'll look at productivity.
Yeah.
Now, with the pandemic and everyone working from home, majority of us, right,
Hmm.
work
Hmm.
is still happening.
Yeah.
Productivity, in fact, has gone up. Number of
Yes.
hours has gone up.
Yes.
I still don't need to sit below the nose of my manager.
Yeah. Much
And
to the
therefore,
unhappiness of managers, a few managers.
a few managers, let's not generalize, but yeah, a few managers. So I think
Few.
the
I said few.
fundamental, yeah, you said few, correct. But I think fundamentally, Shivani, if this mindset changes, a
Yeah.
lot of things can get embraced very
Hmm.
beautifully. But this
Hmm.
needs to change because
Yeah.
unless this, why does it take a pandemic for us to realize that if Shivani can be in Chandigarh and still be productive, I don't need her to sit in the Gurgaon office. It doesn't
Absolutely.
matter. Yeah, but if Shivani is going to take undue advantage of that to say, you know what, there's no net connectivity, oh, but electricity went, oh, but I will do this, oh, but I do that, oh, but I tried doing it, then it's not a win-win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This phenomena remains the same. I don't think it has changed in the pandemic because people who say connectivity is an issue or this is an issue, till some time back were saying I'm not well or traffic is a problem or something else is happening in my life. So it's actually the mindset, and I think that you're right, it has to change. it has to change, because a pandemic or a no pandemic, the person's value system, the person's approach to work will not change.
True.
That's my view. What do you think?
Absolutely. Completely agree with you.
So how do we do it? Like, how do we start doing it? How do we change that mindset?
I think it all starts with the self. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very easy to do this, right? But it all starts with the self.
yeah,
You got to come in the center of it and say, listen, what can I do differently? The moment you do it
yeah,
for yourself, then you say,
yeah.
what can I do for my team? The moment you do
Sure,
it for your team, what can I do for my function? The moment you do
sure,
it for the function, then you say, what can I do for my organization? Do it for the
sure.
organization, what can I do for my ecosystem or my fraternity? Can I
Yeah,
do something at a NASCOM level? Can I do something at a FICCI level? Can I do something at an IMA level? Right?
true,
Only
true.
industry bodies. And then as you grow, you actually go and make larger contributions which impact more people.
Yeah.
But start with self.
Starts with self. Absolutely. Perfect. For the audience here, guys, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the comment section, and we'll take it up as and when we can. Sahil, you've done extensive work in the area of employer branding in your organization. It's a forte that you have. So could you share some of the the unique or innovative practices that you follow, specifically towards building a great employer brand that would help people who are looking at treading on that journey?
Sure. I think, Shivani, fundamentally, what has really shifted over the years is for people to start speaking their mind.
Hmm.
And the moment you create a safe space for
Hmm.
people to talk,
Hmm.
they will not need to go somewhere else and talk.
Hmm.
Right. So that's point
Very
number
true.
one, creating a safe space. Point
Very true.
number two is you allow people to be themselves.
Hmm.
So when you allow people to be themselves, then they are in their own skin. And when
Hmm.
they're in their own skin, you will
Hmm.
automatically see they will have much more skin in the game.
Hmm.
And
Very true.
therefore, what is very important is when you really go on this journey of employer branding, you go in this space of how do you start making a difference.
Hmm.
One of the first few steps
Hmm.
is to first create platforms for people to come and talk.
Yeah.
Because the moment you create a
Yeah.
platform for people to come and talk, and they
Hmm.
don't have the fear or the threat that
Hmm.
if I open my mouth here,
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
will happen to me,
Hmm. Yeah.
I think people will be very comfortable talking.
Right.
Very comfortable talking. But if they're
Yeah.
going to have that fear, oh shit, you know what? In this forum of 100 people, if I say something and my boss also hears me, and immediately I'm going to get a call after that saying, "तूने वहाँ क्यों बात किया?" It kills the purpose. It
Yeah.
absolutely kills the purpose.
Yeah. So, Sahil, while you talked about creating giving employees a platform to speak. Now, while HR may want to do it, but the leaders may not be open to it. Or, like you said, if I have that fear in my mind that if my boss listens to what I say, then I'll be penalized for it. So, my question is that then employer branding, is it, who does it? I mean, whose responsibility is it? Is it HR, or is it the leaders, or is it everybody else? Because
I think it's
uh,
everyone's responsibility. It is
so how?
everyone's
Yeah,
responsibility because let's look at it this way, right?
yeah,
When people join the organization, everyone tries, and I would choose to believe this, that everyone tries to give them a fantastic experience,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Now, how many organizations go and tell people as part of the new joining kit that within the first week go and do a LinkedIn post? Think about it. No one's going to come and tell you on your face, you
yeah,
know what, I tell my people to
yeah,
do this. Maybe they have different ways and means of telling their people to do it. But if
yeah,
you just keep your eyes open and see,
yeah.
certain organizations do it very, very well.
Hmm.
Whereas there are others who don't really tell them to do it. They just do it because
Yeah,
they had a great time, or they go and tag people and offer gratitude because they
yeah,
made a great difference
yeah,
for doing that. So I think
yeah,
the responsibility, and maybe we should not really call it employer branding, but we should just call it the whole talent experience.
yeah.
Because going out there and branding, to my mind, is only an outcome of the
Hmm.
right input.
Right.
Yeah, because if
Absolutely.
you give
That's
the
the end result.
outcome before the input, somewhere then
Yeah.
you're choosing the wrong metric.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because imagine, right? You're calling up people and saying, you know what, please go on LinkedIn, go and like my post, or please go on LinkedIn and write something about your experience.
Yeah.
Versus,
Yeah.
you're in the middle of a very, very busy day, and you're
Yeah.
just exhausted, and it's 11:30 at night, you finished your last call, and
Yeah.
suddenly you get a notification on your phone saying, you know what,
Yeah.
Mr. Leader or Miss Leader, whatever, I want to thank you. It's been a week
Hmm.
in this organization. And I
Hmm.
really enjoyed not just the pre-boarding, the onboarding, the entire buddy experience, and
Hmm.
my connect with leaders in the first 1 week.
Hmm.
Now, that to my mind is going
Absolutely.
to fuel a lot
Yes.
of positivity and
Yes.
genuineness as
Yes.
compared to putting it as one of the tick boxes to say, you know what, tell us how your experience was, give us feedback.
Absolutely.
Very different.
I think self-given, I would say, recognition. I think it comes from a lot of heart, a lot of soul. You really mean it, and that's where I think a lot of organizations who have that sort of a repute in the market to be great employers actually don't do any employer branding themselves. Rather, they are branded as employees of choice by word of mouth of the employees. I've seen that, where the employees become your best brand ambassadors, and you don't have to do anything about it. Just give them, like the input you said, give them the right experience at all touch points. It's not just about the first 7 days of induction or the first 30 days of orientation and then let it be. It's the entire employee life cycle experience, even if it is an exit, even if the person has resigned. That's I think that's where a lot of organizations fall flat,
So you
because
can actually
सब
see me
कुछ अच्छा किया.
smiling. Yeah. Yeah, you can see me smiling, Shivani, only because you
Yeah.
just stole my thunder. Because I was just coming to that saying, even when employees become alumni,
Yeah.
we've seen it with many organizations where they actually go out there and say, X this company, X that company. And
Yeah.
that's because they actually have a great sense of pride.
Yes.
They have so much of pride because for them, they become friends of that organization even after moving on from that organization
Absolutely.
because of the entire way they were treated there and how they were
Yeah.
made to feel valued.
Yes.
As compared to where you also hear of many organizations who refuse to recognize you once you resign. It's like a crime resigning, right? The moment you
Absolutely.
resign, it's like, "Wait, itni badi galti kar di that people stop talking to you. They say,
Yeah.
this guy
Yeah.
was anyway not good. He was not
Yeah.
working well.
Yeah.
He was anyway a problem child. I'm happy he's going."
Yeah.
Vis-a-vis saying, you know what? You were a brilliant person.
Hmm.
It's a huge loss for us, and not doing lip service after the person has resigned. You got to say this if you really believe in the individual through
Yes.
the entire journey. And coming to
Absolutely.
your earlier point of talking about different generations working, I
Yeah.
think you got to play it, even giving recognition needs
Yeah.
to be played very appropriately. It's like salt,
Hmm.
right? If you give
The right
a
amount.
baby boomer too much of recognition every day, the guy's going to think there's too much salt in my food, mera blood pressure बढ़ जाएगा, right? And if
Yeah.
you don't give a millennial
Yeah.
10 times a day saying, you know what, you were brilliant. I think you have another idea, but you didn't implement it. You want to do it tomorrow. That
Yeah.
constant loop of
Yeah.
talking, engaging, pushing them to their limits, making them think. And once they can ideate, then getting out of their way. I think many
Yeah.
times what we also do is, being a millennial myself, I'm interacting with a lot of college students,
Hmm.
my guest lectures
Hmm.
and otherwise. I
Hmm.
realize that fundamental concern is, listen, we have great ideas, we give them, but then we are told how to do it.
Yeah.
I
There's
think
no
that is what
freedom.
really cripples.
Yeah. Yeah. Micromanagement. That's something that I also hear from a lot of college students. We're booming with ideas, but then when it comes to execution, it's not our way. It's the way ऐसे ही होता है यहाँ पे. That so completely agree. Sahil, a related question to this. We spoke about the second part of our topic is about employees ranting. Now, tell me, we just spoke about employees being best brand ambassadors for the company and giving them a nice employee experience. Now, employees ranting, is that a consequence of poor or deceptive employer branding? Do you think in such cases the focus on being the employer of choice has been completely ignored or missed by the company? What are your thoughts? Why do employees rant?
So let me break this up into two, three parts, right? One
Yeah.
part is where I go in overdrive on my branding, right? So when I go on overdrive on branding
Hmm.
and the experience is on the other end of the spectrum, which is very poor,
Hmm.
people see a very clear disconnect.
Yeah.
मुझे यार बाहर जाके तो हम इतना बोलते हैं बट मेरे से पूछो ask me I am the guy who's suffering I am the employee right and then they say listen it's all a farce
Yeah.
right it's all a
Yeah.
farce the second is if you go into the space where people are just generally not all out there to brand themselves and maybe in a moderate manner and if the
Yeah.
experience has been moderate you will not have too much of ranting happening you'll have the few odd bad apples who are
Yeah.
anyway the ones who are pissed off with something irritated
Yeah.
they'll go out and rant.
Yeah.
The third is where you don't do branding or do very
Hmm.
limited branding, but
Hmm.
people do the branding for you because they've
Yeah.
had a fantastic experience. Now,
Yeah.
all of these three we've discussed, but I think fundamentally what one would be very wary of
Hmm.
is when people go quiet.
Yes.
And that is
Absolutely.
the most scariest place to be in. When
Yeah.
all your people who are your top performers, your talented guys,
Yeah.
your passionate people who are willing to put in hours,
Yeah.
not just in number of hours, but in commitment, in
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah.
And when they don't talk in meetings, when they go quiet, when you see absenteeism going up with them, when you see them
Mm-hmm.
mentally disconnected, when you
Mm-hmm.
see those kind of colleagues who are saying, they have reached nirvana or they have
Yeah.
resigned to the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
They actually resigned to the situation or the employability or even the job a lot more before than they actually put down their resignation.
Papers. Absolutely. I
And that's
completely
what
agree.
I call as EWS, which is early warning signals. Very, very important to pick those up because when the
Yeah.
gap between the two continuously keeps increasing, it's like a typical rubber band.
Hmm. Yes.
It is going to just break away
Absolutely.
sooner than
Yeah.
later.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's I think it's a very valid point that you made about employees going quiet because usually people, when they decide to leave, it's not that not everybody, voices their opinions or how they are feeling, and it's up to how well can the leaders and I would say HR, but yes, also the leaders identify that why this person has gone quiet, and I think towards the end it is quite predictable that the person is going to leave because the person is very seemingly disengaged. So
Yeah.
yes,
And
I think yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Go
And you
ahead.
know what the dichotomy here
Hmm.
is that people don't want to burn bridges.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
which means I
Exactly.
will never really come and tell you what is paining me or what is aching me because
Yeah.
then you will start holding it against me.
Absolutely.
So, I
And
would
it goes
rather say,
back.
no, no, everything is fine. It's all
Yeah.
good. Maybe it's
Yeah.
my aspiration or it's my
Yeah.
inability or you know what, I
Hmm.
wasn't up to it or I couldn't stand up to the situation, so I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
reality is, it's not just one sided. The problem is
Yes.
always on both sides. But just
Absolutely.
because I
And
don't want to burn bridges, just because I may not the
yeah.
future, no one knows the future, right? I may have to come back and work with you again tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I'll
Yes.
be all nice and,
Or somebody may
won't be
do my
with
ref
you.
check, or somebody may do my ref check with you, so I don't want to
Yeah.
burn any bridges. Yeah, but it goes back to what we said earlier, that it's all about giving a safe space to people to talk. And I think if you give a safe space to people to talk, even first this situation will not come wherein people are holding themselves back and just silently looking out, and ultimately you get to know when they put in the papers. And there also, we have an exit interview, but the exit interview just remains a formality because
Maybe.
asli baat koi bolta nahi hai. So,
Yeah.
I'll flip the question now, Sahil. Sometimes employees misuse the power of social media by falsely maligning the brand image of an organization. So, in such situations, what should be the stand of the organization? Should it respond or retaliate or take action or just let it go? What do you think? What do you think should be done?
See, I think noise creates more noise,
Hmm.
right? So
Hmm.
if you keep adding fuel to the fire, you're going to have a forest fire.
Hmm.
And therefore, I would never encourage anyone to fuel in to that
Hmm.
fire.
Hmm.
What I would rather recommend is two things. If
Hmm.
someone has I would basically break this up into two parts, right? One is a
Hmm.
genuine guy who
Hmm.
has really got frustrated,
Hmm.
tried everything possible within his or her reach, and then
Yeah.
said, it seems to work, let me go and tweet, or let
Yeah.
me go and put a post, or let me tag the company or tag the CEO or whatever, right?
Right.
And the second is the guy said, listen, yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm anyway out of this place.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter to me. Let me anyway go and rant.
Hmm.
So I think we should break it up very clearly into these two categories.
Hmm.
The first
Well said.
category, thanks for that. I think the first category, Shivani, is very important. Don't call up the person and say, hey, you did something on LinkedIn or you sent a tweet. Tell me what
Hmm.
happened.
Hmm.
You're just adding to the person's
Hmm.
wows. You're
Hmm.
adding
You're
on.
opening a Pandora box, actually.
No, you're just adding on because the guy's going to say, listen, I've already sent 20 emails. I've written to
Yeah.
50 people. Go read your emails and then call me.
Hmm.
Don't
Hmm.
call me for me to repeat my same story to you because you're the 51st person who's calling me,
Yeah.
right? So there, I think whoever gets in touch, one, the individual from the organization who gets in touch should have two or three virtues:
Hmm.
extreme patience,
Hmm.
good ability to listen,
Hmm.
and three, empathy.
Hmm.
Because I may be the best guy, but if
Yeah.
I'm going to call up
Yeah.
and going to tell the guy, what's wrong with you? Why did you go and write
Yeah.
something? Like, okay, I'll show you what I can do, right?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to have someone who has a very calming personality, someone who is very genuine, comes across
Yeah.
as very genuine,
Yeah.
does the homework very well. So
Hmm.
understands the facts of the case,
Issue.
what has
Yeah.
happened, what went wrong, who was
Yeah.
responsible, what steps were taken, get all the facts.
Yeah.
And then in that conversation, never counter. Because the moment you
Yeah.
start countering as the first step, the guy
Yes.
will either get defensive or aggressive.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
basically, what you need to do is when you have that conversation, speak to the individual, go with a solution.
Hmm.
And if you
Hmm.
need to negotiate the solution, that's fine, but go with the
True.
solution.
Right.
And then after the person is convinced, sorted, issue closed, fires died out, then a week or two later, speak to the person and say, you know what, you did this. It
Hmm.
wasn't in the best of interest. I know you were angry. I know you were
Yeah.
agitated. I know we didn't really step up
Hmm.
to your expectations.
Hmm.
But then if you also did the same thing, you know,
Yeah.
how does two wrongs make one right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
leave that individual with a moment to really sit back and reflect that while this
Reflect.
may have been one incident, going into
Yeah.
the future, does the individual want to exercise the same choice of what they did with you? Because tomorrow it could
Yeah.
be an organization, it could be another colleague, it could be someone else.
Yes. Yes.
That's category
Yes.
one. Let's move to category two.
Hmm.
Category two are the people who just generally rant, adat
Hmm.
hai. You
Hmm.
want attention, want the spotlight on them, need eyeballs. I think they need a
Hmm.
very different level of treatment. So I think
Yeah.
dealing with them, and again, we went back to segmentation. I
Yeah.
think being able to segment who falls in which category
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
able to deal with that accordingly, I think is very, very important.
So you've left out the important question: how do you deal with the second category? That's
You haven't
the
left it. I
elephant
would
on
just
the table.
wonderful. Let's take it head on. So I think people who generally rant for no
Hmm.
fault of the organization or
Hmm.
generally are that way, I
Hmm.
think it's very important to take it head on.
Hmm. Yeah.
Pick up the phone, love to do an in-person meeting, but
Yeah.
if it doesn't work because of the whole COVID restrictions and all of that and the way things are, do
Yeah.
it as a video call.
Yeah.
So make a request saying, you've read this. Ideally, you should just invite the person to office,
Hmm.
offer the person a nice cup of coffee, calm the
Hmm.
person down, and
Hmm.
then get to the core of
Hmm.
what made the individual do what the individual did.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a fantastic opportunity to convert the
Yeah.
person from being a person who ranted to being your
True.
brand ambassador.
True. True.
It's not an easy journey. So I'm not sitting here like the
Yeah.
Pope trying to prescribe something, right? I'm saying it's
Yeah.
difficult. It is
Yeah.
difficult, yeah. But figure out why. The moment you
Yeah.
get to the why of what the person did, it will
Yeah.
open up a lot more avenues for you to understand what next.
Sure. Sure.
And of
I think
course, if you're doing
sometimes
a
they
virtual
just,
environment, do it over a video call, a Zoom call, a
yeah.
Teams call, whatever. Get the
Yeah.
person on board. Again, listening mode, understand what the person has to say,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
start reasoning out.
Right.
Many people are logical. They'll see reason in what you say. There will be a certain group of people who will be absolutely illogical.
Yes.
You can't make
Yes.
everybody happy. You're not
Yes.
running a chocolate factory.
Absolutely.
So then you let those go.
Yeah, sometimes people just want to be heard. I've seen in my experience the most difficult of employees जिससे बात करने में सबको डर लगता है. All they want is आप उन्हें बुलाएं and you have a patient conversation with them and just let them talk. The moment you start, getting defensive कि नहीं ऐसा तो नहीं हुआ कभी या वैसा तो नहीं हुआ कभी, then they know that you have an agenda and you're trying to push it down their throats. And that's when the conversation goes for a toss. So I think sometimes, especially in the case of these difficult employees, people who are very difficult to please, I think all that they want is just listen to me, to whatever I have to say. And then I think another important thing which you mentioned earlier is whoever is having that conversation needs to do their homework very well. Before even the person comes into the room, the entire, the history of what happened, why it happened, how many times this has happened with the same person. I think that also helps in steering the conversation in the right way, because you do have, evidence sort of a thing with you when you make a conversation and you're just not talking in the air. So very good perspective, Sahil. I like the two segmentations that you made. The first one was very, very, balanced, and something that, would really help people, who are wanting, who struggle with this kind of conversation. And the second one also, कि, जब कोई बदमाश है तो उसको, we should take them heads on, is also very important. We should not be the goody ones all the
Yeah.
time and
And
let
Shwani, to
people.
add to your point of listening, I
Yeah,
choose to believe that people are very intelligent.
yeah.
And therefore, the concept of active listening is very
Hmm.
important.
Hmm.
Many times
Yes.
in our mind, we start thinking, oh, the person's going to rant,
Hmm.
bolne do, and you just keep there on the other side of the phone, right?
Hmm.
But people are not fools. When they
Yes.
realize that you're on the other side just listening, or maybe just putting your phone on loudspeaker and doing something else, or not paying attention, or while the person's talking even on video, you're looking
Yeah.
at your mobile and doing something else, it only aggravates the situation. And
Absolutely.
therefore, active listening
Yeah.
is very important.
Absolutely, it is. Completely agree with you. I'll take some questions from the audience here. So Aniket is asking us a question. Your 3 tips to talent acquisition managers to get the basics right, which in turn help employer branding. Nice question, Aniket.
Very good, Aniket. So, Aniket Karnik, thanks for that question. Thanks for going up first. I think the first, I can't call them tips, but I would just say my recommendation to you would be
HR bites.
uh,
Your HR bites would be what?
okay, so my HR bites would be in terms of basics. I think first
Hmm.
step is very clearly understand your organization's EVP.
Hmm.
If you don't have one, create one. Work with your business leaders, work with your senior leadership team to create an employer value proposition.
Right.
Number two, understand the tenets of that value proposition very, very well. So अगर एक EVP है, आपका EVP क्या है?
Hmm.
Okay. Second is when you talk to candidates, customize the EVP to their needs. Just because
Yeah.
you have an EVP, सबको चिपका मत दो. If someone's need is compensation, understand that. If someone's need is work-life balance, understand that. If someone wants to grow in their career and
Hmm.
therefore wants diversity of roles,
Hmm.
understand. And
Hmm.
therefore, within your EVP,
Hmm.
whatever fits into the need of the candidate,
Hmm.
play that out very beautifully, because then it'll be music to their ears as compared to saying, oh, but we are an organization that is very open, that is very transparent, that believes in meritocracy. Doesn't work.
Hmm.
So you don't need to give the entire speed. You need to come very specific to what is the need of that candidate and address that need.
Yeah.
And the third, give them enough examples or evidences in the process of you influencing them of where you have made a promise, you've
Hmm.
delivered the promise.
Hmm.
If these are the two things that you can do well,
Yeah.
I think employer branding will automatically fall in place.
True.
So you got to make a promise, because unless you don't
Yeah.
make a promise, you're only English.
Yeah.
आप
Yeah.
सिर्फ अंग्रेजी बोल रहे हो, बहुत सारा सुन लिया अंग्रेजी. You got to make
Yeah.
a promise and you got to deliver that promise and you got to
Yeah.
give the person enough conviction through what you say, that in the past, for however long you've been associated with the organization, you have made promises for careers of people,
Yeah.
and you have delivered those promises.
Absolutely. I think it's the concrete evidence that you need to, it's not just saying कि हम ऐसा करते हैं और हम वैसा करते हैं, but it's also what हमने ये किया है. And this is, what we've done for our people. And I think if you instill that trust in the person that what you're saying is right, and, they can believe in you, and it's not just something you're saying to get them into the organization, I think that's where, like you rightly said, that's where employer branding is amazing. Great. Okay, now I'm going to ask you a very candid question. Do you think deceptive employer branding exists? How can candidates or prospective employees gauge whether what's being projected on social media, especially on social media, is it actual reality about the organization, and hence can they make informed career decisions based on that? So, do you think how do you think candidates can make out that this is real or not? First of all, do you think do you think deceptive employer branding exists? My first question was that.
देखो, अगर आप ये सवाल 20 साल पहले पूछते ना, I would think twice. ऐसा इसको मैं क्या जवाब दूं? But in today's world, I can tell you, everyone knows everybody. Okay, and typically when you drive on the roads of Delhi, you would know कि तू जानता नहीं मेरा बाप कौन है is the standard dialogue, right? So here, I think so organizations would be fools if they think that people don't know people, right? So everyone has a friend. हर एक दोस्त जरूरी होता है. Everyone has a friend in somebody or the other, in some organization or the other.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you want to go out there and be deceptive about it, be rest assured that this is a self-sabotage. Because people are going to talk to people and the truth is going to come out. Now, the maturity is when you talk to multiple people. Because one person can be wrong one time.
Yes.
But multiple people can be wrong one time, but not everybody can be wrong all the time.
True. Absolutely. So it's both ways, actually. One is for the employers, that if it is, and in the era of social media, it's so easy to reach out to anybody. You just have to send a connection request and you can just, go on to the messaging part and reach out to someone. Correct. And for the employees also, I think sometimes, one person's or two people's opinion about the organization shouldn't cloud your judgment. I think it's a complete homework that one should do in terms of finding out from, and it's not difficult to find out, who's working in that organization, what are the reviews, what are people saying about it. You can just go through their posts and see. Sometimes LinkedIn posts say a lot about what kind of an organization you're working in. So I think it's a two-way journey. It's both, from the organizations. But yes, I asked you this question because I've seen this happening, wherein there's a conscious effort to do employer branding. But, when employees come into the organization after believing what has been said on social media, etc., then they feel that, they've been taken for a ride. So
and therefore you have infant attrition, right?
Yes.
Because then people say, वादा तो बहुत किया था आपने, but वादा निभाया नहीं, तो फिर doesn't seem to work.
True. Absolutely. Great. I think we are coming just, to the end of the session. So your closing thoughts, again, I would ask you any advice. Okay, specifically for startups. For startups, who don't have too much of, proven history. They find it difficult to attract talent. And the reason is that unlike the big established brands, they're yet to prove themselves. So, so my question is that when you are new and you don't have enough to showcase in terms of your EVP, except for maybe the compensation and growth, so what kind of employer branding activities can be done there? Just want to, end the conversation by asking typically about startups, because a lot of people today, including myself, have startups. So what's your, what are your HR bites on that?
I think, Shivani, we've actually come a complete circle, right? You started off with Junoon, Jasba, and Josh.
Josh.
I think it's a beautiful way to end this conversation with that. I would say startups are very clear about what fuels their purpose.
Hmm.
एक सोच है और
Hmm.
उस सोच को जुनून, जज्बा और जोश के साथ फ्यूल करना है. And I think that is enough of an EVP. You
Hmm.
don't need anything else to build as an EVP. You have a kick ass idea. You've created a
Yeah.
startup because of that idea. You want to take that idea to the moon. All
Yeah.
you need to do is get people to see what you are seeing through your eyes. And if you can do that, I don't think you need to spend a lot of dollars on building an EVP. All you need is the connect.
Absolutely. I think it's making people see the same dream that you see with your eyes. So superb, Sahil. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this one, and I think I could go on and on. But the time limit is 1 hour. But we shall very soon have another session with you. Thank you so much for taking out time on a Friday evening and sharing your HR bites. And I enjoyed giving my SM nuggets. So let's continue the journey and meet again soon. And thanks to all the audience who joined us today. It was an amazing session. I'm sure so many takeaways, personally for me, so many takeaways, so much learning. And I'm sure all of you also learned a lot, many things about, the reality of employer branding and how one can do it in the right way and how powerful it is if it is done in the right way. So thank you, Sahil, once again. And I'll see you soon again on another episode of Leadership Spotlight series.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Thank you so much.
Thank you.